Hello everyone. The day opened with yet another massive drone attack by the Russian military. Ukrainian armed forces stated they have destroyed 29 Russian drones as well as a cruise missile launched at the southern Mykolaiv region and the central Dnipropetrovsk region, which is just north of the Zaporizhia region. You can actually pull up the same map I showed you yesterday and see where that is located. So the second part is interesting. The Ukrainian army is using the cluster munitions. First of all, CNN, I'd like for you to be a little bit more precise in how you formulate your statements, because Ukrainian army generally does not fire at entire cities or villages. Usually they're firing at a specific object. So you might want to do your research and find out what they're firing at. Second, I'm not a big fan of cluster munitions. They are tremendously dangerous, and they have long-term effects because bits and pieces of them are left unexploded, and then they can cause injury and death in the future. However, Russia has been using cluster munitions in Ukraine for months, if not years. And this is the first time I'm hearing about it when Ukraine started using them. Also, something to remember. So, as Ukraine was asking for better armor, better weapons, better ammunition, basically everybody was shuffling their feet, and Ukraine was like, okay, what can you give us? Well, since cluster munitions are not being used by most countries in the world, they have stockpiles of them. They're just sitting there. And so they said, well, how about this? And Ukraine said, okay, we'll take it. So it's not like Ukraine is using cluster munitions for good reason. They have nothing else to work with, or very little else to work with. European Union had restated its support for Ukraine, but again, I am concerned about Hungary and now Slovakia with their pro-Putin leadership. So I'd like to see where that particular bit of European policy is going. I appreciate the optimism of the UK minister, and it's true, Ukraine has been dealing some seriously huge blows to the Russian fleet. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a complete defeat, but progress definitely has been made. There were some flagships destroyed. There were some headquarters taken out. So that is definitely happening. This is huge. Remember I told you what a shock it was to a lot of people, myself included, when Armenia sent aid to Ukraine and turned its back on Russia. And I'm not saying they don't have a good reason. I just didn't think that was going to happen anytime soon. But Armenia is definitely joining a lot of other countries that are realizing that having Russia as an ally is a really bad proposition. And so, in addition to having sent aid to Ukraine, they have also officially sided with the International Criminal Court. So Armenia is now yet another country where Putin cannot physically go because he will be arrested and handed off to the international authorities. And this is another one of those things where Russia keeps posturing, keeps, projecting strength and grandeur without substantiating it with any evidence. So Russia says that there's not going to be any new conscriptions anytime soon because they have 335,000 in reserve. Okay, so where are they? What happened to them? Are we sure it's that number and you don't have like an extra zero in there somewhere? Because I wouldn't put it past them. The real situation, I suspect, is a lot more dire because people who are within the age group for mobilization are starting to actively avoid meeting with Russia's military officials because they know right now there's only one place they can be sent if they join the army, and that is Ukraine. And they know what has happened to people who have been sent there. So nobody's too anxious to actually go there. Something on the subject of companies pulling out and not pulling out. Really, Burger King? Really? So apparently, while McDonald's had pulled out a while ago, Burger King said they were going to, but they still continue doing business in Russia. And unfortunately, they're not the only ones. And again, I don't understand this. You know, this is terrible, terrible publicity. So just get out of there already. In conclusion, I want to touch upon something that I haven't spoken about in a long time, but I know I've brought up this topic before. So remember when Russia had opened its prisons and prisoners started joining the army and joining particularly the private military group Wagner. And at the time, I said, along with a lot of other people, so these are criminals, thieves, rapists, murderers, some of them serial. What happens if they survive the war and come home and get bored? Well, unfortunately, we're starting to get answers, and the answers are far from comforting. In Karelia, that is the portion of Russia that they actually stole from Finland, a former Wagner member has been arrested and indicted for the murder of 6 people. In Rostov-on-Don, the court sentenced a former Wagner member to 11 years and 6 months of prison for another murder. Why I say another? Because he was serving a prison term for murder already when he was allowed to go free and join the army. And so he came back and did exactly the same thing. A Wagner member in Krasnoyarsk region burnt 2 women alive. In Kuban region, a supposedly pardoned former Wagner member had escaped prison. He was previously sentenced for 10 years. A Wagner member on leave in the Lipetsk region murdered a 4-year-old girl. A Wagner member in the Nizhegorodsky region had an argument with his sister, murdered her, and burned her. So my question is to the Russian people. I know you didn't care when you released this scum of the earth on the people of Ukraine. You were just fine when these people were doing all of those horrible things to Ukrainian men, women, and children. But they're now coming for you. And there's nothing you can do about it. In fact, there's been a few murder cases, hideous murder cases, in which people either got no sentence or very light sentence because they have served in Ukraine. So they're out there, they're walking free, and they have nothing to do. And there are no Ukrainians nearby to murder. What are you going to do about it? Think about it.